It was a night unlike any other night in our village. A night when everything changed. The wind was still, and the stars above seemed to shine less brightly, as if they knew something ominous was coming. The night was quiet, too quiet. No one in the village could have guessed that this calm would soon be shattered by a scream so horrifying that it would echo in our minds for years to come. The scream came from the palace grounds. It was the scream of someone who had seen something unspeakable, something beyond the realm of human understanding. That scream was the beginning of the end for Prince Olu. Everyone in our village knew Prince Olu, the first son of the king. He was a man of charm and beauty, with a smile that could melt the coldest heart. Women adored him, children admired him, and men respected him. But there was something about him that was unsettling, an undercurrent of darkness that no one could quite pinpoint.
My grandmother often warned us about people like Prince Olu. She would sit by the fire at night, her old hands weaving stories of spirits and curses. She told us that the Orishas, the gods of our land, does not favor those who seek too much. Beware of the man who has it all, she would say, for he may have traded something precious to get it. My cousin Boye worked in the palace, serving the prince. He spent his days polishing the prince's shoes, fetching water, and running errands across the vast palace grounds.
Boye was proud of his position and often came home with stories of the prince's generosity and charm. But over time, those stories became less frequent, and Boye himself became quieter, more withdrawn. The lively spark in his eyes dimmed, replaced by something I couldn't quite understand: fear. One night, as we sat around the fire, I confronted Boye. I asked him why he had become so distant, why his hands trembled when he spoke of the prince. He tried to dismiss my concerns, but I persisted, and finally, after a long silence, he began to speak. "Have you heard of Ashabi?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I nodded. Everyone in the village knew Ashabi. She was a young woman of unparalleled beauty and grace, known not just for her looks, but for her kind heart. She was betrothed to a wealthy trader from a neighboring village, and their union had been arranged since childhood. Their love was pure, destined by the gods, or so everyone thought. But Prince Olu saw her, Boye continued, his voice trembling, and everything changed. Boye told me how the prince had become obsessed with Ashabi. He would watch her from a distance, his gaze intense and unsettling. He began sending her gifts so extravagant that no one in the village had ever seen their like. Gold, jewelry, fine clothes, enough to tempt any woman. But Ashabi refused them all. She loved the trader and made it clear that her heart belonged to him alone. The prince didn't take the rejection well. He became moody, locking himself in his chambers for days. Strange noises began to emanate from his room. Whispers, chants, the dragging of something heavy across the floor. When he finally emerged, Boye said the prince was different. His eyes had lost their warmth, replaced by a cold, calculating stare. His smile, once charming, had twisted into something sinister. And then the trader, Ashabi's fiancé, was found dead. His body was discovered in the forest, broken in ways that defied explanation. The villagers whispered of spirits, of dark curses, but Boye knew the truth. He was convinced that Prince Olu had made a dark pact. a deal with forces beyond our understanding to eliminate the man who stood between him and Ashabi. But even with her man gone, Ashabi remained resolute. She refused to be with Prince Olu, telling her family that she felt the darkness around him, something that made her skin crawl. She became more withdrawn, barely leaving her home. Boye, terrified for her safety, tried to warn her to leave the village, to escape while she could, but Ashabi refused. She wouldn't leave her family behind, no matter the danger. And then came the night she disappeared. It was the same night we all heard the scream. Boye was at the palace, performing his usual duties, when he heard the prince's voice, low and menacing, coming from the courtyard. When Boye went to investigate, he saw something that would haunt him forever. Prince Olu was standing in the courtyard. In his hands was a rope like a hangman's. His eyes were wide and wild, his voice barely a whisper, as he muttered to himself about love and sacrifice, about how he had finally done what needed to be done. He dropped the rope in one corner and took a shovel, not minding that Boye was watching him silently. Boye was paralyzed with fear, unable to move or speak. He watched in horror as the prince began walking towards the forest, his steps unsteady, as if he were in a trance. Driven by a mix of fear and curiosity, Boye followed him at a distance. The prince led him deep into the forest, to a place where the trees grew thick and twisted, their branches like the gnarled fingers of an ancient giant. There, in a small clearing, Boye saw Ashabi's body lying on the ground. Her eyes were wide open, staring up at the sky. There were no signs of struggle, no wounds, just the lifeless body of the girl the prince had been obsessed with. But as Boye stood there, frozen in shock, something miraculous happened. A soft whisper, like the rustling of leaves in the wind, filled the air. Boye looked around, his heart pounding, and then he saw it. Ashabi's eyes fluttering shut, and then slowly opening again. She took a deep, shuddering breath and sat up, as if waking from a long, deep sleep. Boye couldn't believe his eyes. Ashabi was alive. Before Boye could react, Prince Olu emerged from the shadows, his face contorted with rage. He lunged at Ashabi, but something stopped him. An invisible force, something powerful and ancient. The air around them crackled with energy, and the very trees seemed to come alive, their branches moving to shield Ashabi from the prince's wrath. The Orishas had intervened. A bright light filled the clearing, so intense that Boye had to shield his eyes. Olu screamed in frustration, his voice echoing through the forest. But it was no use. The gods had judged him, and he was found wanting. When the light faded, Prince Olu was gone, vanished into the night, taken by the spirits he had tried to control. Boye rushed to Ashabi's side, helping her to her feet. She was weak but unharmed. The darkness that had surrounded her lifted by the divine intervention of the Orishas. Together, they made their way back to the village, where Ashabi was reunited with her family. The village elders, who had been skeptical of Boye's warnings, listened in stunned silence as he recounted the events of that night. They had no choice but to believe him. For Ashabi's return from the brink of death was a miracle they could not deny. From that day forward, Boye and Ashabi were inseparable. The bond they shared, forged in the fires of fear and redemption, was unbreakable. They both knew they had been given a second chance, a chance to live, to love, and to honor the gods who had saved them. The village celebrated their victory over the darkness that had threatened to consume them. Life returned to normal, though the memory of that night lingered in the minds of all who had heard the scream. As for Olu, he was never seen again. Some say he was taken by the spirits. Others believe he is still wandering the forests, lost in the shadows of his own making. But Boye and Ashabi never looked back. They knew that love, true love, had triumphed over the darkness, and that was all that mattered. In the end, the story of Prince Olu serves as a reminder of the dangers of unchecked desire, of the darkness that can consume even the brightest souls. But it also reminds us of the power of love and the protection of the Orishas, who watch over those who are pure of heart. Boye and Ashabi's story is one of redemption, of light overcoming darkness, and of the enduring strength of the human spirit. And in our village, it will be told for generations to come. A tale of hope in the face of despair, and of love's triumph over all. Thank you for watching our story today. Kindly like and share it to other people if you enjoyed it. Also drop a comment on your thoughts about Prince Olu, Ashabi, and Boye. Bye for now.